already at Survivor Series. I get home from rehearsal, and I just could not help but bring my good buddy TJE back on the pod. ZNT Wrestling Show is back. Yeah, the 2003 retrospectives are so popular here on the channel. We're going to be going into 2004 for sure, and Tomas and I are stoked about that.
One more pay-per-view to go. I mean, I just love how the deeper we get into this, the more of my childhood memories are being repressed, and I'm full into I know where the hell I was during all this, because I think I watched the show live. Yeah, scarred me for life as a child.
I definitely watched this show live for sure, because I was so stoked that it was Survivor Series after the previous year's Survivor Series being the greatest of all time.
You know, I always think about what show made me want to order it. I mean, what match made me want to order the show. I think it was Vince and Taker.
What?
As a 9-year-old kid, I wanted to see Vince die.
Oh man, I'm not gonna make the comment that crossed my mind. But anyway,
kid watching SmackDown every Thursday. Yeah, this is before the Friday night era, and you know, because SmackDown was my favorite show because it was the end of the school week. I didn't have to worry about anything, and just seeing Vince McMahon being the evil prick that he was, and Undertaker being my favorite wrestler on SmackDown. So I was ready to see Taker just annihilate him.
It was time for the American Badass to kill him. Like, little did he know that 18 years after this, Vince would be inducting him in the Hall of Fame. But regardless, my friends, we're, of course, talking about Survivor Series 2003, a show which has a lot of wrestling fans mixed, to say the very least. I don't know about you, Tomas. I love this Survivor Series. I think it's honestly, I don't want to say top 5. It's top 10 for me easily, though.
As a critic, this is one of the greatest Survivor Series of all time.
Yeah.
As a fan, watching this as a kid, oh my God, such lopsided booking on this show. Like, they wanted to tear our fucking hearts out, and I didn't think they realized how much they were doing on this show.
Yeah.
With the exception of one match. And no, I'm not talking about the main event.
It was not a good night to be the baby faces, that's for sure. But hey, guys, just a quick reminder, if you're new to the channel, smash that subscribe button and that thumbs up on your way out. That would be absolutely tremendous, especially if you want to see us talk more wrestling nonsense like we are right now. But yeah, I mean, it's a horrible, horrible night to be a babyface, surely. Vince McMahon and the head booker at the time, whoever it was, I don't know if it was Brian Gewirtz, he might have been the head writer, but they just wanted to tear your fucking souls out. But, geez, like, do you want to just get into it? I mean, we can just do the happy stuff first.
I was going to say, on the ironic flip side, because I can't think of the word right now, we were talking about No Mercy and how the heels were so heavy on that show, too, all because the head honcho at the time was Brock Lesnar. And what do you know? The WWE champion is in the opener. It's Team Angle versus Team Lesnar. Team Angle consisting of Team Captain Kurt Angle, Bradshaw, Chris Benoit, John Cena, and Hardcore Holly, we'll be getting to him in a minute, taking on this absolutely mastodon team of Brock Lesnar, A-Train, Big Show, a returning Nathan Jones, and you heard it right, Matt Morgan.
Yeah, that's right. Who forgot that Matt Morgan had a stint in the WWE?
Two stints,
yeah, because he's known for his time in Impact, of course, as the Blueprint. But here he was making his debut. He was a young Matt Morgan for sure. He was a big blue chipper, as JR liked to call him. But this was honestly
we also have Jones returning since his stint at WrestleMania. They gave him one more opportunity, and guys, this is going to be the second to last time we ever talk about Nathan Jones on this pod. This time they turned him heel. In a very interesting take. And basically, Lesnar has gotten all of his. This was very reminiscent of Team Andre from the very first Survivor Series that had Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, One Man Gang, and how he got all of his big beefy friends to take on Team Hogan. This was very similar. Lesnar's got the beef on his team. He's got A-Train, Big Show, Morgan, Jones, just ready to run rampshot over these baby faces.
Yeah.
He's basically these reluctant, these strange bedfellow partners. You got Bradshaw, who is, trying to avenge his partner, Ron Simmons. You got the usual
Mm-hmm.
Benoit and Angle teaming up. We got Cena, who we talked about at No Mercy, that Angle basically helped turn the tide for Cena, helped Cena come to the good side.
This is a
And
brand
then
new babyface John Cena, and folks, get used to that because John Cena would never turn heel ever again. He would continue to be
um
a babyface throughout the rest of his WWE run and beyond. He's one of the most beloved people in Hollywood right now as the Peacemaker in the DCEU. I mean, this was a huge shift for me as a kid because I was like, what, the rapper is a good guy now? What? Like, I have to like this guy now? And lo and behold,
and
I love the man. Love John Cena.
despite our personal feelings towards Holly, tell us how Holly got into
Oh,
this match, because it's been a minute since we've seen Bob Holly in the
yeah,
WWE, and it's very relevant.
sure. Let's talk about it. So Bob Holly was wrestling a match against Brock Lesnar, who had just won the WWE title at SummerSlam 2002. And I don't know what happened. I don't know if there was a little slip or something like that, but basically Bob Holly breaks his neck taking a power bomb from Brock Lesnar, and he's on the shelf for over a year. Here he is looking for revenge, and this is I don't want to call it a nitpick yet because this match is very fun, all things considered, and I think this sort of added to the unpredictability of Survivor
I
Series as a
have,
whole.
you know what? It's okay to nitpick this match because I have the same nitpicks, and it's this whole beginning sequence.
So
So
rushed. So
Team
rushed, wasn't it?
Angle is already at a disadvantage because Lesnar's team is stacked, both figuratively and physically, literally. And Holly, the dummy, rushes the ring, and he only has one thing on his mind. He doesn't care about his teammates. He wants Brock Lesnar. He wants Brock Lesnar so much to the point where he ends up shoving the referee, and he gets disqualified right off the bat. So
Yeah,
Team Angle is already at disadvantage. Holly's not even going to participate
which
because he
is
got a little hot-headed and he put his hands on the ref.
it's so odd though that he was disqualified right then and there because the bell hadn't even rung yet. He should
Exactly.
Yeah, so it was so just to preface this, first of all, let me just mention John Cena was the first music to hit on the night, and he cuts a brilliant battle rap as always. He mentioned something about him being a big purple pinwheel and all that stuff. Brock Lesnar is the last guy to make his entrance, of course, as the WWE champion in the opener back in 2003, which was unheard of at this point for me. Bob Holly rushes Brock Lesnar as his corner pyro is going off, and exactly to your point, shoves Brian Hebner out of the way, and he's like, that's it, you're done, to the back. Team Angle's down to 4 members already.
But it wouldn't last for long because immediately once the match starts, Bradshaw hits a clothesline from hell on A-Train and immediately eliminates him.
A stiff clothesline from hell, too. And it gets even worse after that. Big Show tags in, hits Bradshaw with a chokeslam. That's it for Bradshaw. So much for avenging Farouk, right?
And it really makes you wonder why Holly and Bradshaw were in this match to begin with when your key players, Benoit, Angle, and Cena, the match isn't even a minute old and they're the only people left on Team Angle.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, you got to get the top 3 baby faces on SmackDown over somehow, for sure. But yeah, you have an extended little heat segment on John Cena. You have Nathan Jones tag in for a little bit, which I know a lot of people shit on Nathan Jones' in-ring technique. Hot take, I didn't think he was terrible, my friends.
No,
I did not think
nope.
so. He was millions of times better than Omos, that's for sure. He looked like he was
looked
ready.
a lot better in this match, and I'll tell you this right now, he looked a lot better than Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan was still a rough rookie, wasn't he? Morgan was not the one to get fired after this. Nathan Jones, I guess, was not liking the touring schedule. Not to get too ahead of myself, of course, but
I was gonna say, because we're gonna talk about Jones one more time on this pod, so
are we?
stay tuned for. Yeah, he's in the Royal Rumble.
Is he really?
He is.
Oh man, I must have forgotten about that. I mean,
Yep.
we'll have to stay.
Not
stay
to get
tuned
too
for
off
June.
topic, but
Stay tuned for June.
the
My
Royal
friend.
Rumble is the last appearance of both Jones and Scott Steiner. So
Yeah. Scott Steiner.
not-
Scott Steiner as
again,
well.
not to get ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about Steiner later.
Right.
But
I could have sworn it was Matt Morgan, but I could be very wrong. But what we have here, the big brutes are just going one at a time on John Cena. Then you have a brief little hot tag sequence for Benoit, and the crowd is so behind Chris Benoit at this point. This is the point where I started noticing that this crowd was really, really behind Benoit as a top guy. And it would have been so refreshing if we got a Lesnar Benoit program going into Mania, but that, of course, would not happen, as you'll notice.
Very
Benoit
strange that it didn't, consider what happens later in this match.
Yeah, so basically, Benoit took a vicious press slam from Big Show, too, who proceeded to tell Kurt Angle to kiss his ass in the process, which is some talent from the United States champion at this time. Kurt Angle gets the hot tag, and he is suplexing everybody around the ring. And as someone who was a big fan of Kurt Angle growing up, this brought me a lot of joy going back and watching this. Kurt was...
And considering who's on Lesnar's team, very impressive.
German suplexes. Kurt is 237 some odd pounds, and he's, suplexing those guys like they're nothing. Kurt's a badass. I mean, Kurt still is a badass to this very day. He hits an angle slam on Matt Morgan, eliminates him. Nathan Jones will tap out to the ankle lock, and then shortly after that, my little 7-year-old heart was broken at this point when Brock hits Kurt with one F5, and that's it for Kurt Angle. Looking back in hindsight, this was the right call because Kurt was an established face.
And as you notice, this match is a million moves a minute with like little breaks in between. We had three eliminations right in the beginning of the match, and then you have Angle going on a tear, eliminating, I don't want to say the weak links, but looking back in history, the two forgettable members of Team Lesnar.
Well, still, he eliminated two. He eliminated two blokes from this match, so he didn't look look weak in any facet whatsoever.
So we're resetting the stage now. It's Angle and Cena. I'm sorry, Benoit and Cena on Team Angle, and Big Show and Lesnar on Team Lesnar. Mm-hmm. And this is where the big moment happens, where we said we're surprised that Benoit and Lesnar didn't get a championship program, because Chris Benoit makes the Beast tap out. I remember this being such a huge deal when I was a kid.
Oh, I was popping huge for Chris Benoit at this point. And it was brilliant ring psychology between Lesnar and Benoit this time, too, because Benoit was working his shoulder a lot, softening it up for the crippler crossface. And then when he finally locked it in, Lesnar was in that hold for a while. But then he finally taps, and Benoit eliminates the WWE champion from this match, and the crowd in Dallas proceeds to chant, "You tapped out" at Brock Lesnar, which is one of my favorite chants growing up.
And again, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but all the way up until Lesnar's departure at WrestleMania, he would not escape that chant. And it was very deserved. Very deserved for Lesnar to get chanted that. And a very interesting dynamic here. We're down to the last three people. Neither team has their captain left. It's Benoit and Cena for Lesnar. For Angle, and for Lesnar, Big Show's left.
Yeah, it's a handicap match in favor of the baby faces, which was odd for the time. It's still odd in terms of wrestling psychology, but if you look at who's on the heel side, just the Big Show, makes sense. Makes sense. So this is another big moment in the match that a lot of people tend to forget. John Cena pulls out his steel chain as the ref is distracted, nails Big Show in the face, and hits the largest FU you have ever seen. A lot of people remember the WrestleMania moment, but this is where it happened first at Survivor Series. And Cena gets the win for Team Angle.
Yeah, and the think about it too. In the middle. Cena's he's tweening a bit. He's still cheating. He's using the chain. He's going to be using the brass knucks for a little bit. So I like this version of Cena because he's still babyface, but he's still tweening a little. He's not full blown shaking hands and kissing babyface just yet.
Yes, not quite yet, but him and Benoit do share a handshake at the end, showing the mutual respect for one another, and those two would actually go on to have a very fun alliance heading into the Royal Rumble season, where, not to get too ahead of myself, of course, Chris Benoit was being held down by new SmackDown general manager Paul Heyman at the time, which we didn't even mention. John Cena would be Benoit's, I don't want to call him his lackey, but they were on the same page a lot of the time. And I will never forget the infamous wash your mouth out with soap match with John Cena.
Between Cena and Rhino?
Cena and Rhino, yep. And Paul Heyman made the stipulation, and he had to face the music, and Benoit was the one to force Heyman to do it. So
yep, Benoit put Heyman in the sharpshooter, and I will always remember the quote of Heyman saying "F you," and Cena says "F me, F moi." No, I think it's "F you." Loved it.
I always remember Cena saying "Chris." and like Chris pulls up on the sharpshooter. It's the funniest thing.
Loved
But
it.
yeah, those two would have a great alliance. They are the two sole survivors, of course. Very fun opener, Tomas. 3.5 stars. I really like this match.
I hope this match made you feel good because that's the only thing on this show that's going to make you feel good.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? So backstage, real quick, I do have to discuss Vince going to visit his son Shane, both of whom are fighting members of the Brothers of Destruction in various stipulation matches, as we'll talk about.
Also, let me point this out now. This is when the brand split was at its peak. Both shows had their own identities because Shane's on Raw and Vince is on SmackDown. They have not interacted all year.
Ever.
So
Yeah.
seeing Vince and Shane in the same locker room, it was a nice meeting of, holy shit, these shows have different identities, unlike what WWE's doing right now.
Exactly. We'll get to that. Stay tuned for our Backlash 2022 podcast. But Vince is basically begging Shane for some help, basically, and Shane is like, "No, you beat up my little sister. You think I'm gonna help you? No way." Vince leaves the locker room. He runs into Stone Cold Steve Austin. Of course he does. Because, again, Stone Cold is on Raw. Vince is on SmackDown, so it's a big deal back then. And then they just share the weirdest laugh with each other. Like, Stone Cold knows that Vince is going to get his ass kicked and probably buried alive by The Undertaker. So it's
and
more
Vince
like...
is laughing in hopes that Austin's career ends tonight. There's a lot of stakes. And a lot of these matches.
A lot of subtext in that laughter for sure. It's a really underrated moment in time in wrestling history. But you want to talk about underrated, Tomas? How about Molly Holly versus Lita for the Women's Championship? Lita was just coming off of a career-threatening neck surgery. Molly Holly was the Women's Champion that Jerry Lawler always made fun of egregiously. And you know what I noticed? The commentary wasn't really taking any enjoyment away from this match, and these two women worked really well together. They got 8 minutes, and they threw everything they possibly could at each other. There were near falls. There were some...
this was peak Molly and Lita. Mm-hmm. Both of these ladies looked in tremendous shape. They were probably at their best physicality, best physique, and... yeah, this match was a nice showcase of what they both could do. Not bogged down by, honestly, anything.
Yeah. I mean, I believe Lita pinned Molly at Unforgiven, as we talked about in the tag match, and that's how she got this title match. So, quintessential WWE booking right there. But, I mean, as basic of a build-up as it is, these two ladies went out there and they put together, I think, one of the better women's matches of the year. This is, I think... I don't want to say it's up there with the triple threat from WrestleMania 19 at all. I don't think it's quite near that level, but these two, again, worked really, really well together. Lita was power bombing Molly Holly out of the corner. She must have been watching some Undertaker tapes backstage to prep for that spot. There was a Molly go round, which looked really, really nasty at that point. I think that's where the big near fall was. So Molly is getting, all worked up. She can't put Lita away. So, of course, being the heel that she is, she exposes the middle turnbuckle. And, it's odd because Chris Lash has always said, if you introduce something, if you introduce a weapon, you're the one that's getting hit with it. No, not in this case. It was Lita. It was Lita that got hit with that. And she was rolled up. Molly retains. Pretty basic finish there, I would say, wouldn't you?
Am I the only person that feels that the wrong person went over in this match?
Oh, yeah. You know what? Yeah. After Lita's injury, I can see why you'd say that for sure. Absolutely.
I know they were just prolonging her title win, but considering what happens at WrestleMania and Lita not being anywhere near the women's title, I just feel like they could have threw her a bone at this one. Considering the show,
Lita wasn't even on the card, was she?
No, it was. It ends up being Victoria, Molly Holly, and somebody else.
That's right.
And we'll get to that when we get to that. But on a show that is so heel heavy, I feel like they could have threw us a bone.
Yeah, they really could have. But Alas, Molly retains. Her reign continues into a very forgettable match, which we'll talk about at Armageddon, that I'm sure nobody remembers. But, I mean, this was a fairly good match, Tomas. It's 2.5 for me. I really dug it. I really dug what they did.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, this was both ladies showing off what they could do, and a very rare moment for WWE and women's wrestling because, as we know, it would continue to go downhill. So it was nice to see a nice little spark.
Yeah, it would go downhill up until the year 2015, so
Yeah.
somewhere around there. So, oh boy, are you ready? You ready for this? It's Shane McMahon versus Kane, one-on-one, one more time in what they're dubbing the final encounter. This time, thank God it's not a last man standing because they're going head to head in an ambulance match here. And we've talked about ambulance matches before on this pod, but it's been a while, so just to kind of refresh everybody's memory here. The only way to win basically is load your opponent in an ambulance, close the doors, and then you're taken off to the nearest medical facility, basically. I don't know what it is in Dallas, but
basically your casket match, your coffin match, your dumpster match. Just throw opponent into said prop and close the doors.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to talk about this insane bump that happened at the beginning? I know you got a kick out of this.
It's Kane and Shane. So there's no need for lockups. There's no need to have full entrances. Shane immediately rushes to the ring. He attacks Kane. And with his version of the cactus clothesline, he takes Kane over the top rope and Kane lands right on his fucking head.
Jesus, man. I mean, you know that Shane is kind of terrible in the ring. So, like, Kane kind of had to save himself from sheer disaster, breaking his neck, paralyzing himself. But, thank goodness he didn't do that. But this was honestly, to me, this is just my personal bias against last man standing matches. This was more fun for me. This was a more fun brawl. I think they had more intense spots in here. It was a lot more exciting because you didn't know exactly what was going to happen next. There was a lot of, I was big on like the hardcore matches growing up and the backstage brawling. So I really, really got a kick out of this. Shane.
This was definitely the more memorable encounter between the two.
The final encounter, absolutely. Do you remember Shane backing a truck into Kane and going through a security window?
Well, let's get how we led up into that. So basically, Kane and Shane are brawling in the audience. And as, Shane is kind of goading Kane to follow him.
That's
even commentators are saying, Shane's trying to get Kane to follow him. They go to the back and the feed cuts off. One of the cameras snagged and we lose pictures of the pay-per-view. The fans are pissed. I bet everyone at home is pissed because, they paid $50 for this pay-per-view. This being pre-Peacock era. They get back the feed. They finally make it back to the backstage area. Shane is saying, come on, goading the monster into some sort of trap. Shane grabs a kendo stick and just starts beating the hell out of Kane with this kendo stick. He's able to get him kind of like, a toll booth when you go into a parking garage where they check your tickets. He backs him into one of those. And basically, like you said, Shane gets into a pickup truck and, well, first of all, the commentators act like they've never seen a car before because they go, oh, what is that? That's some sort of truck, SUV. I'm like, car. It's a car. Just say it's a car.
Yeah, JR acts like he's never seen a car before, as if his buddy didn't just get run over 4 years ago. That car just ran over Austin. Just call it a car.
In wrestling, if it's not a wrestling object, the commentators will act like they've never seen it before. You could give them a full pepperoni pizza, and they'd be like, "What is this gooey meat-like
what is
bread
this?
piece?
What is this disc?
What is this disc of cheese and meats?"
Even taking you back to WrestleMania in Tampa when The Fiend made his entrance, and they were like, "It's a box-like structure. Just call it a fucking Jack in the Box." That's what it is. That's what it is. It's not a wrestling item, but
that's a subject for another time. Just weird things that commentators say.
Oh man! But
instead of saying, "Hey, this happened an hour ago," they have to say "moments ago." Like,
Moments ago. Yeah.
Does time not exist
A few
in the
minutes
world
ago.
of wrestling?
Just call it a
They
few
can't
minutes
say
ago.
35 minutes ago.
Good Lord. Yeah, but
Oh.
now they can say, yeah, Cody Rhodes is wrestling at the top of the hour on Monday Night Raw at 9 p.m., getting the most out of the ratings, boy. So, yeah, that's the only reason.
Anywho.
That's the only reason time exists in wrestling nowadays. So, anywho, what we have here. So
this card-like structure runs over Kane, backs him into like a glass-like pane that shatters into
a glass like Kane. You said a glass like pane. I heard Kane.
Oh. And then to even make it better, once he backs him into it, Shane gets on a walkie-talkie, which I'm surprised they said, what is that in Shane's hand? This weird communication device. And Shane goes, send it. And they go, send what? What is he talking about? Send what? I'm like,
bruh,
y'all need to take a chill pill.
Yeah, take some Lexapro or something, and just chill. Stay off the coffee for a minute.
Because surprise, surprise, here comes an ambulance.
Yeah, but it was a second ambulance. It was the one that wasn't in the entryway. So if hypothetically, hold on, if Shane hypothetically stuffs Kane in this second ambulance, that would basically mean it wouldn't count. Exactly. So the match wouldn't have never ended, like the dumpster match, right? So.
This ambulance is backing up like it's a semi. It's going like 2 miles an hour, and it parks like 100 yards away from Kane. So Shane is basically saying, no, stop there. I'm going to lug his 300-pound carcass all the way to you.
Logic.
Don't back up more. It's an ambulance. It can go, go a little faster.
It can go quicker, but I guess Shane didn't trust the driver anymore. I mean, I wouldn't have trusted the driver, with how shitty some drivers are on the way home from my day job. But so what we have here, Kane, of course, comes to. He goozles Shane McMahon, as Taz called it. And they basically fight some more. Kane is throwing Shane into the cement walls. It's pretty riveting stuff here. Less riveting than I remembered it.
This all goes back to what we've said about Kane. He's that horror movie monster. And Shane is trying everything he can to keep the monster down, and he gets up every single time. He hit the guy with the car, and he shook it off like it was nothing.
Yeah, he hit the guy with a car. He trapped him in a limousine and had a semi destroy it. He kicked him into a dumpster, which was on fire. All because Kane tombstoned Linda McMahon. I love this feud. I love how it started. So that's just your daily reminder that Linda McMahon was tombstoned, to everybody's glee. Anyway, Kane, so of course the feed cuts off again as they're fighting back to the arena, and the crowd does not like this at all. The crowd in Dallas is very pissed indeed, because they paid all that money to be there. And Kane goes back through, they go back through the Gorilla. They come back into the arena, and then they start fighting by the ambulance. They never go back to the ring, mind you. This is a match that is really unique because it all takes place on the outside. It takes place backstage. Never in the ring, though, aside from that scary bump that Kane took. Very, very, very interesting to me. But, okay, Shane gets this... Okay, so they're fighting around the ambulance. He sits Kane down. We all know what's coming. He puts a trash can right in front of his face, and then Shane pulls out a crash pad-like box structure and places it in between Kane's legs. And we know what's coming here, right? Goes to the top of the ambulance-like structure that's in the entryway-like scaffolding area, and Shane jumps off the ambulance-like structure, hits a coast-to-coast-like kick into Kane's grotesque-like face, and
when you look at that spot, it looked like it hurt Shane a hell of a lot more than it hurt Kane.
Mm-hmm. Even with a crash pad, mind you.
Because if that box wasn't there, Shane would have broke his fucking back. Splatting on the concrete, and I'm sure that hurt like hell still.
So I don't want to hear anybody complaining that the crash pad was there, because if it wasn't there, then Shane would probably, be paralyzed for life. So, basically they fight a little bit more. The crowd would probably be chanting, "This is awesome" after that coast to coast. Let's be honest here. It's really, really easy to please them. But Kane, they do some little near falls there, and then Kane hits a humongous tombstone pile driver on the outside, and that's it. Shoves Kane in the ambulance, and that is it for this feud, thank God. That is it.
This was fun.
It
The
was.
whole feud was fun because I feel like Shane was a good opponent to make Kane look like that horror movie monster. Because we all know Shane, he's not scared to bump. He may not be a good wrestler, but he takes bumps very well. And I think this was a very good feud to establish Kane as honestly the number 2 heel on Raw.
Yeah, he sure is. Only behind one man, and that is Hunter Hearst Helmsley himself. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, we joke a lot, you know, how the announcers are just fucking clueless in this match, calling it "send what." That's an SUV, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. 3 stars, better than the Last Man Standing match, in my opinion.
As much as I love last man standing matches, this was the more memorable encounter between the two. And I had a lot of good memories with this match. Considering, again, we're going to get really heel heavy into this, and I understand Kane needed to win. But don't you think maybe they should have threw Shane the bone at the last pay-per-view?
No, because if you're trying to build up Kane as this horror movie monster that nobody can topple, he should not be losing to a non-wrestler, all due respect. But Shane is not in the ring regularly. Kane needed to win both matches for sure. Shane could still look strong here and there, jumping off high things, but he should not have been winning against Kane, especially after unmasking him.
Considering what Kane's going to do next and what it all basically builds up to, I get your point.
Yeah, especially what it builds up to later on in this card. But with that said, Josh Matthews is interviewing a despondent WWE champion, Brock Lesnar, and he asks him one simple question, Tomas. Do you remember what it was? This is such a fun interview.
I remember what Matthews said after that, but what did he ask him?
What does it feel like to lose?
Oof.
And then Brock was like, I didn't lose.
With all due respect, you tapped out to the crossface.
Here, hold on. Let me get into the Brock Lesnar voice. I didn't tap out, and I didn't lose.
Brock Lesnar sounds like that big bully on the playground who just got beat and embarrassed at a game of dodgeball, but he is in complete denial.
I don't know. I mean, I could beat anyone out here single-handedly, and the Brock Lesnar impressions will get worse as we go into WrestleMania 20. Which, speaking of...
And then what happens next is something that I would have absolutely feared for if this was the year like 2020 or 2021.
Mm-hmm.
The World Heavyweight Champion, Goldberg, comes into the picture. And you know damn well, if this happened now, they'd be unifying those titles.
Yep, they sure would.
Thank God they had a brain in their head in 2003.
Thank God they lost both titles.
All Goldberg says is, aren't you going to wish me luck in my match tonight? Lesnar stares at him. They are already planting the seeds. Again, WWE had some goddamn brains back then, though.
Yeah, they absolutely had brains, for sure.
If this was Survivor Series 2023, and I would have saw that interaction, my heart would have dropped.
Yeah.
Because I would have saw it coming from a million miles away.
Yeah, like a year after they split off the titles anyway. So, speaking of having brains, Jonathan Coachman comes down to the ring for a brief little promo here. And some of you might not remember this part, but let me just give you the cliff notes. Jonathan Coachman is out there running down the city of Dallas, yada, 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 of course, because he's Eric Bischoff's sidekick. And he looks in the front row, and of course he sees the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban, sitting in the front row. He invites
a huge wrestling fan.
Yeah. Credit to Cuban where it's due for this whole freaking segment because he was great here. He looks like he was jazzed to be there. And he gets in. He says he can't wait to see Stone Cold kick Eric Bischoff's ass right in the coach's face. Which right on cue, Eric Bischoff comes out and he gets in Cuban's face. And Cuban basically lays out Eric Bischoff right before they go out and do Team Austin and Team Bischoff. You know?
Remember what I said about people who are involved in main events showing up before the main event?
Yeah, fair. That's very fair.
That was my biggest issue with this segment.
Yeah, was Eric Bischoff. Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Where
That
are
is,
your priorities, Bischoff and Randy Orton? Because Randy Orton would come out and RKO Mark Cuban.
that's true. That's so
how
true.
you utilize celebrities.
That was a clean.
That's how you utilize them.
That was a clean RKO too. Like, give Mark Cuban credit where it's due. It was a really, really solid RKO, and that was just when the RKO was getting over as a finisher. So, kudos to them. Kudos to them for putting it over. But yeah,
good way to put Orton over, but again, a pointless segment. And again, they needed something to break up the monotony in this pay-per-view because there's a lot. There is a lot on this show. And they need something, yes. I get it. Just gotta give the fans a break. But again, Bischoff and Orton are your key players in one of your main event matches.
They
don't even be dicking around with coaches and owners of basketball teams.
No.
Just saying, get your head in the game next time, Orton.
Literally, yeah, get your head in the game like it's High School Musical or something. But yeah, I mean, Mark Cuban was over. I mean, because it's Dallas. So, I mean, the crowd was into the segment at least. So, give them credit where it's due. But you want to talk about monotony? It's this next match. It is this.
Here we go.
Match.
Speaking of matches to settle the crowds down, it's the Basham brothers, Danny and Doug, defending the WWE Tag Team titles against Los Guerreros, Chavo and Eddie. Not gonna lie, after Eddie dropped the United States title, I forgot him and Chavo were still a team.
They were briefly. There was another rematch they had with the Bashams on SmackDown where Chavo would officially turn on his uncle. But this was, I mean, it was a good match. It was a
my
good
issue with this match, and I think you know we're gonna go with this. Why couldn't the Guerreros drop the titles on pay-per-view? Why'd they have to drop them on SmackDown? I hate when they do this.
I see what you're saying. And then they do the rematch, you know, just like nobody else's business. But
I know to a lot of fans, they're going to disagree with my mindset because they're going to say, oh, well, if titles only change hands on pay-per-views, then what's the point of TV? And you got to have titles change hands on TV because that'll help with ratings and yada, yada, yada. I don't care. I'm an old school mindset. If I'm paying for a show, I want to see some titles change hands.
Yeah.
I want to look at the highlights of a pay-per-view and say, oh, the tag team titles changed hands? Well, shit, I should have bought that show.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, there were no title changes on this Survivor Series.
Pay-per-views are the place to change titles. I know that's kind of a stubborn mindset to have, and I know it's never going to be like that. It also helps with my brain when I think of title reigns. It's easier for me to remember when they won it on a pay-per-view as opposed to RK Bro won the tag team titles on a March episode of of Raw. I don't know. That's just a personal thing, but I especially don't like title changes on Raw or SmackDown, and then the rematches on a pay-per-view. Like, because I am less inclined to believe the titles are going to change hands on the pay-per-view when they literally just changed hands on TV like 2 weeks ago.
Well, sometimes those matches can be really good, like Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles at TLC 2018 when we were in the crowd. That was a rematch from a TV title change. So I very much
understand that, but also that's from an era of WWE where they're so desperate for ratings that they're changing titles on TV just for the sake of the ratings pop.
That's true. Oh, fuck. Oh, poor Big E. Hopefully you get well soon, buddy. But
that's not a shot at Big E. That's a shot at WWE.
Exactly. But this was, I mean, the Guerreros are in this match, so the match is at least going to be good wrestling for sure. But other than that, this was pretty forgettable. I mean, the Basham brothers have this weird gimmick with Shaniqua where it's like BDSM and all that, and they come out with some risque ring attire during their entrance, which is something I completely forgot about.
This match is the finish. So Shaniqua tries to get involved, and Eddie catches her, and they don't hesitate. They don't hesitate to fucking clothesline her, and then they frog splash her, which is good on Shaniqua for taking those bumps. I'm surprised she didn't get swelling from that frog splash. But my issue what happens next is that Los Guerreros are your baby faces, and then they say, put her on my knee and I'm going to spank her. And I was just like,
why?
That's fucked up.
Why?
Fucked up.
Like what? Why do you need to do that? I mean, go win the tag titles instead. Go win the tag titles instead of the pop, you know? But they totally for a team that was all about lying and cheating and stealing, they were too oblivious to see the twin magic that was going on between the Bashams, because they are both bald, white as a sheet, plain wrestlers in there. They're pretty interchangeable, Doug and Danny Basham, and they don't see that the illegal man, the fresh man, is in the ring. And one of the Bashams rolls up.
And the great word, the great words of R-Truth, the Guerreros got.
They did. And Eddie Guerrero was the one who was pinned. One of the Bashams rolls up Eddie Guerrero with a handful of tights, and that's it. 7.5 minutes. I mean, I don't know how to rate this.
I'm comfortable giving it 2.25. No, that's too. That's too generous. 2.
Yeah, I'll pull a Chris and give it a 2. How about that? That's fair. That's totally fair. But
I wonder if you give Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins a 2.
Oh man, I'll have to text him about that. But okay, let's talk about the best match on this show, far and away.
At a whopping 27 minutes.
Yes, yeah, for sure the best match on this card. This is the classic Survivor Series elimination match with Stone Cold's team comprised of the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, Booker T, the Intercontinental Champion Rob Van Dam, and the World Tag Team Champions, the Dudley Boyz, going up against Eric Bischoff's team of Chris Jericho, Christian, Mark Henry, Randy Orton, and the one and only Scott Steiner, of course. And you know what was weird about these entrances is all these dudes are coming out to the ring with their respective leaders. All these stars. Yeah, Chris Jericho is coming out to Eric Bischoff's entrance music, and Christian is doing his peeps pose to I'm Back. It's so weird.
Shawn Michaels is coming out to Stone Cold Steve Austin's theme.
Rob Van Dam is doing his thing to Stone Cold's theme. It's so bizarre.
So, how did we get here? So, like we've said before, there is a rule put in place that Stone Cold Steve Austin cannot lay his hands on another superstar unless he is physically provoked. Austin doesn't like this anymore because a lot of wrestlers like Jericho, like Christian, like Steiner, they are mentally provoking Austin. They're basically telling Austin, you're washed up. The old Austin would have whipped my ass. Why don't you do something? Why don't you lay one right here? Just basically pushing Austin's buttons. So Austin goes out to the ring one night, says, if you think Austin should be able to open a can of whoop ass on anyone he finds suitable, give me a hell yeah. Bischoff appears on the Titantron to say, okay, fine, I'll cut you a deal. You want to whip ass, and I don't want you here anymore. So we're going to both comprise our teams. And the winner, if Bischoff's team wins, Austin's out of the WWE. Austin's team wins, he can whoop as much ass as he wants to on Raw.
He can raise hell.
So Jericho doesn't like Austin. Christian doesn't like Austin. They need a heavy, so they reach out to Mark Henry. Stone Cold has whooped the ass of Scott Steiner a couple too many times. And Randy Orton is basically being lent from Evolution to help out with this cause.
Yep.
RVD's a good guy. The Dudleys are good guys. Booker T's a good guy. Those are the people that Austin picked. But Shawn Michaels is the interesting one. We just talked about WrestleMania 14.
We sure did.
Austin and Michaels never liked each other. So Austin personally went up to Michaels and said, I need your help. Please be on my team. And Michaels agrees.
Michaels, the good Christian man that he is, decides to lend a helping hand to someone in need, as diabolical as he found Stone Cold to be back then. So he is on Austin's team, and there's some, I mean, to start off, I mean, wouldn't you agree this is the match of the night, far and away?
It is.
It's
Team
so
Bischoff
good.
Has not one, not two, but 3 managers.
Yeah, so Scott Steiner
With the
has
only real threat being Bischoff.
Yeah, Bischoff is the only real threat. Mark Henry has the Mac Militant.
Reluctantly there. And Teddy Long, if it benefits Henry, would get involved. But does he need to? His client's the world's strongest man.
Exactly. Teddy Long was just there to be a mouthpiece for Mark Henry, but there was some good wrestling in there until Scott Steiner decided to tag his his stiff ass in, and someone didn't give him a fucking mic a year after the fact. But it's he's wrestling Booker T. There's a man wrestling from Steiner, and thank goodness he's the first one out of there when Booker T hits the Uranagi, the bookend, the rock bottom, whatever you want to call it. Steiner's out of there after Stacy was cheering for Booker T and her former clients, the Dudley Boyz. So much.
Before that happens, though, if you're Stone Cold, you have to be like sweating bullets on the outside because Booker T hits a scissors kick, I think, on Henry. And then instead of going for the pin, he does the spinner Rudy. Like, come on, Booker. Stone Cold's job is on the line, and you're over here
Logic.
not taking this seriously.
Booker T's job isn't on the line. Booker T's job isn't on the line. He's got nothing to lose doing a spin of Rooney. But
yeah, but Bischoff is probably going to make Team Austin's life a living hell if they don't win this match.
That's fair. That's fair. As we'll see at Armageddon, spoiler alert, Mark Henry hits the world's strongest slam on Booker T shortly after the Steiner elimination, and Booker is quickly out of there. So right away, you're dead even still. So it's a heated competition here. So what happens next is Mark Henry is running roughshod over all of Team Austin, and RVD and the Dudleys are getting in there. Shawn has not tagged in at one point throughout the entire beginning of this match, which is really interesting to note. RVD, so the Dudleys somehow 3D Mark Henry. Van Dam hits the 5-star frog splash, which is a thing of beauty on Mark Henry, and then there's a big gigantic dog pile to oust Mark Henry just like that. And the crowd was I mean, they were behind Austin's team in general, but seeing the Mark Henry elimination, they were in it. They were so into this thing, hook, line, and sinker. Shortly afterwards, you have a nice little sequence with Van Dam and Jericho. And playing into our next retro pod for 2003, Tomas, RVD's eliminated by Randy Orton via RKO. So
planting the seeds right there.
Good booking for sure. And Randy Orton,
Devon is. Do you guys remember the flashback? Because Jericho hits one of those to eliminate Devon.
The flashback, yeah, he hits a spinning sleeper neck drop style maneuver.
Yep,
it's called the flashback.
It's called the flashback.
I never knew that before in my entire life.
I've never heard it called breakdown.
And that's very true. It's very true. It's better than mic check. It's better than mic check or the stroke or whatever Jeff Jarrett wanted to call it the next day. So,
the mic check was Mr. Anderson's move. And the only person to this day that can only hit that good, make that move look good, is The Miz in the skull crushing finale. I said it.
Oh, any Miz haters in the comments? You guys are going to be really, really proud of us for saying that. But Bubba Ray Dudley runs roughshod on all the heels here. But even that is not enough. Bubba hits a Samoan drop on Randy Orton. He's running wild. Jericho hits Bubba right in the nads, and then Christian hits him with the kill switch. And then it's 3-on-1 in favor of the heels, this is where the match gets even better, when it's 3-on-1.
One of the greatest Survivor Series comebacks of all time.
Oh,
another reason why
so good.
Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time. His performance in this match is absolutely tremendous.
Oh, nothing short of miraculous is what it is. I believe Michaels is working Christian this first part, and you and I were talking about this. How come we never got Shawn Michaels versus Christian one-on-one? Can you believe that's never happened?
It would have been a lot better than what we got at the December pay-per-view instead.
Yeah.
But more on that later.
Yeah, little more on that next month on this pod. But, I mean, Stone Cold, you want to talk about sweating buckets. I mean, his only least trustworthy team member is the only one left to save his job. And Shawn, oh my gosh. So Orton is distracting the ref. Christian on the outside slingshots Shawn Michaels into the ring post. And oh my word, the blood coming out of Shawn's head. It is one of the nastiest blade jobs you will ever see in the Ruthless Aggression era. Right, I don't want to say it's up there with Eddie Guerrero's Judgment Day 04 blade job. We'll get to that for sure because it's gnarly and gross. But Shawn knew how to blade, and it made the match all the more effective.
It added to the drama of this match. And when Michaels is basically being left for dead, how the hell at this point can Michaels come back?
Mm-hmm. He can't. No way, no how. But other than that, Michaels hits a humongous sweet chin music on Christian and falls on top of Christian for the pinfall. and Captain Charisma is out of there. I mean, that was a clean ass super kick too. I mean, it's right up there with the best of the Sweet Chin music. So like Christian took it like a champ.
Yep. Old foes Jericho and Michaels fight for a bit, and Jericho tries to put on the walls, and it is countered into another Sweet Chin music, and Michaels pins Jericho. Michaels is coming.
I think it was a roll up actually. The pin Jericho.
Was it a roll up?
Yeah.
Oh my God, the notes I am reading are lying to
It's okay. It's okay. Well, there was so Orton, I mean, they were doing some heat on Shawn Michaels. Randy Orton was getting in the action a little bit. He was hitting some nice cross bodies and some suplexes in there. Randy Orton is going in there for the save, and JR is livid at Randy Orton. That damn Randy Orton needs to stay on the apron because he's rooting for Stone Cold, his buddy, of course. So what happens next, of course, is the walls of Jericho. Shawn miraculously rolls Jericho up to throw him out of there. And Jericho smashes Shawn in the face with a steel chair, and the crowd fucking hates Chris Jericho at this point. Like, Jericho was on the verge of turning babyface, and you would have never guessed watching this match by itself. You would have never guessed in a million years. Because this crowd, I would argue Jericho is the most hated person on this show, just because of that chair shot. And him getting into the face of Stone Cold Steve Austin, being like, bye-bye, flipping him off on the way out, you know? You would have never guessed that he would turn babyface in a couple months.
Never would have thought Stone Cold would be so helpless in his life to just sit back and watch what is happening to Shawn Michaels in this match. He is basically a corpse at this point. It's him versus Randy Orton. And oh my God,
this is
sweating bullets at this point.
This is a blade job right up there with the first Hell in a Cell match. Shawn's face is the proverbial crimson mask. Literally. His face is just covered in the viscous fluid there. And him and Randy Orton go at it for a little bit. And again, big highlight for Randy Orton at this point in his career, because he was only 23 years old when this pay-per-view was going on. Younger than both of us here. Just to those of you keeping score at home, not to throw that out there, but Randy Orton was younger than both of us sitting here when this match was going on. That is fucking wild. Like, I cannot emphasize that enough, how big of a deal this was. Eric Bischoff comes in. Of course, you got to run some interference. It's a big schmoz. There is a ref bump. Mike Chioda goes down. Bischoff goes in, kicks Michaels in the ribs, and Austin has had enough. And finally, at
this point, he's like, I'm probably going to lose my job at this point, so let's whoop Bischoff's ass one more time.
Because he fucking deserved it. They go up the ramp, and he hits Randy Orton with a Stone Cold Stunner, and Orton sold the Stunner so beautifully. Like, he does like a full-on, like, he does a full-on back somersault, and half of his corpse is hanging outside the middle rope. It's glorious.
I feel like it's every wrestler's bucket list dream to sell the Stunner. So when they get the opportunity to do it, of course they're going to make it look absolutely insane.
Let's see who can sell it the most ridiculously.
Look at Owens and Kevin Owens and Byron Saxton at WrestleMania a couple weeks ago.
Austin Theory.
And Pat McAfee.
You know? Like,
they had their opportunities and they wanted it to look good.
So, yeah, crowd is going absolutely apeshit for all of this. Stone Cold takes Eric Bischoff up the entryway-like structure that's at the top of the ramp with the WWE logo draped over it. They're fighting up there. Michaels is crawling over to the cover. It's so dramatic. And then fucking Batista comes in. The Haas of Evolution hits Michaels with a Batista bomb. JR is crestfallen because he knows what's coming. It's the inevitable here. Batista bomb, Randy Orton crawls over and slow count. He's begging Shawn to kick out, but of course he doesn't.
And by the time Austin realizes, it's too late. Team Bischoff wins, and this would be the official end to Stone Cold Steve Austin's. I know we've said this a couple of times, but this is truly the end of his time as a full-time performer.
It's a big deal.
WWE.
It's a big deal, and they gave him a proper send-off in Dallas, and Austin was so out of character in this speech here. Oh, man, I mean, it was emotional looking back on it to this very day. I mean, I know what happens in hindsight, 2022. He wrestles one more match against Kevin Owens, but This was it.
And even what happens just a couple months later, it wouldn't be, we would get a little more Austin until he would just finally, if you
Right.
watch Stone Cold's documentary, he does say that when he was done wrestling, he really enjoyed his time being an on-screen character. But when Survivor Series '03 came around, he realized that he can't cling on to this forever. So
Right.
he needed the proper send-off so he could just do a couple more things with WWE. But he knew he was never, just like Bryan Danielson when he had to step away from the business or himself mentally would never heal.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was such a beautiful moment too, where he goes back to the ring and he sees a half dead Shawn Michaels, who has been properly beaten at this point after one of the greatest performances in Survivor Series history. I know a lot of people talk about this being the start of Randy Orton's ascent up the ladder and how he was an MVP of Survivor Series for so many years. Shawn Michaels in this match was out of this fucking world. And
In a moment that I feel like people don't talk about enough, Michaels gets up, he looks at Austin, and he says, "I'm sorry."
yeah.
Like Michaels knows he cost Austin his career. And
Mm-hmm.
Austin tells him, "No, you did everything you could." But Michaels is just profusely apologizing. And on a personal level, I get that. That was
Mm-hmm.
such a relatable moment.
Yeah, and Austin, in a very out of character moment for him, does not stun Shawn Michaels in the moment, but he forgives him right then and there. He did all he could. It was beautiful. Austin comes out. He gives this really heartfelt speech to the people of Dallas where it all started for him. And then when he's about ready to say goodbye, fucking Coach comes out with a bunch of security guards. And we all know where this is going. It's one last chance for Austin to beat the living shit out of a bunch of random people. Coach takes a stunner. Austin does a few toasts, and that's about it. It's a really amazing, memorable stretch here. The match itself, 4.5 stars, easy. It's one of my favorite Survivor Series matches of all time, if
Oh
not
yeah.
just for the performance of Shawn Michaels, but the aftermath too. Not enough people talk
Now,
about that. It's so
doesn't this
heartfelt.
sound a lot better than just throwing 5 people together to fight for brand supremacy?
Mm-hmm.
WWE bring this style of personal Survivor Series blood back
Yeah,
to the pay-per-view, please.
please. Yeah, bring back, hell, bring back something like Team Cena versus Team Authority, even though it wasn't like, all that great of a match technically. Like the
At
stakes
least
were
the
there.
stakes were there.
You felt it. Dolph Ziggler, I shit on Dolph Ziggler, but as a critic, I got to be fair. That is right up there with this performance that Shawn Michaels had at the
Yeah.
Survivor Series, which is ironic now that I think about it.
But
Dolph Ziggler once again wanting to be Shawn Michaels, but
as we
anyway,
digress, what an
yeah.
excellent moment. And if you
Oh,
think you weren't emotional enough and you think WWE already hasn't ripped your heart out and stomped it
oh,
on the ground,
God,
they're not done yet.
we have to do more.
Like
We're
we
not
talked
done
about
being
with the No
sad.
Mercy pot, Undertaker failed to defeat Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship.
Mm-hmm.
And in all of these attempts for the championship, there is one constant variable, and that's Mr. McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
As long as Mr. McMahon is there, Undertaker can never win the WWE Championship. He can never rid the evil from SmackDown, which is Vince and Lesnar. So after yet another beatdown at the hands of Lesnar, Vince gets in Taker's face and says, "You know what? This is too much fun. You want another shot at Lesnar? Fine. What kind of match do you want?" And Taker just grunts out, "Buried alive match." And Vince says, "Okay, at Survivor Series, Lesnar's going to bury you 6 feet in the ground." And Taker says, "I don't want Lesnar. I want you."
Yeah,
Buried alive match,
so
Vince
great.
versus Taker.
Such a great turnaround, and Vince's reaction to it. As much as
The
I shit on
fact,
him and his booking decisions nowadays, like he was
the
such
fact
an
that
entertaining bad
Vince
guy.
was willing to give Undertaker unlimited shots at the WWE Championship just so he could humiliate him over and over and over in Hell in a Cell, in a biker chain match, in a buried alive match. Vince is the real big evil here.
It's such a brilliant case of dramatic irony, isn't it? Vince thinks that he can get away with doing all this horrible shit, And now Big Evil, the dead man walking, is wanting to make Vince pay for his sins here. And this is
Taker,
again
literally the Grim Reaper of WWE. He is willing to walk Vince to his own grave and put this son of a bitch out of his misery.
which is odd saying that because he shows up as the American badass for this match. And this is spoiler alert, this match is nothing special, but it is a very memorable match, mainly because it's the final appearance of the American badass.
It's not a match. It's a damn snuff film.
It's a fucking slaughter is what it is. What happens is, okay, real quick, before I forget. So this is where we're introduced to Taz's keys to victory before this Buried Alive match.
Yes.
And his key, one of the keys for The Undertaker, I kid you not, my friends, he literally says, match experience, which is fair, but The Undertaker has never won a Buried Alive match. So how does this help him? Number one. And then when he gets to Vince, one of his keys to victory, I kid you not, this is a quote, I'm not paraphrasing this at all, avoid the hole. I mean, put two and two together. Put two and two together, and you can see why that's funny.
My advice in life. Avoid the hole.
Avoid the
Just
hole.
avoid it. Just avoid it.
Avoid the hole.
So this match starts. Taker throws one punch at Vince, and the blood starts flowing like a goddamn faucet.
You want to talk about Shawn Michaels' blade job? How about this fucking thing right here? Vince was gushing blood like a garden hose compared to Shawn. Like,
this is one of those matches, and I use matches in a very, very loose term, that you just sit back, grab your popcorn, and watch Vince absolutely annihilate this man.
You mean Taker? Taker annihilate Vince
Taker,
the other way
yes.
around. Yeah.
Thank you.
Because this was...
Taker drags this poor old man. And I shouldn't even use the term poor. Taker drags him all around the ring and just beats him to a bloody pulp within an inch of his life.
Hits him with the fucking TV monitor at ringside. Like, one
just
part I
takes
forgot
his
about.
ass out.
One part I forgot about actually was the spot with the steps. You would think that Taker would tombstone this old man on the ring steps, but no. He puts Vince's foot on the big part of the ring steps outside, and he takes the smaller part of the stairs, smashes it as hard as he fucking can, and Vince is quivering after this in so much pain. His ankle
Just a
had to be
friendly
shattered.
reminder, this is the match that I asked my goddad to order because I wanted to see it. This is the match for me.
Yeah.
I wanted to see this.
It's nostalgic. It's nostalgic for a lot of reasons, for sure. Vince
A
was
steel chair shot that echoes throughout the arena.
Oh,
And then Taker
so sick.
goes up to the ramp and grabs a shovel-like object. A
You
stick
son of a bitch.
with something at the end of it that resembles a shovel. I'm surprised Michael Cole said, "What the hell does that Taker have? What is that foreign object Taker has?"
That's
Like,
gonna be
he
a new.
takes that
That's gonna be it.
shovel, and he smacks it on the steel steps to let everybody know it's not like a metal. It's not like a garden shovel,
No,
that could kill somebody. But it sounds pretty solid.
this is like the shovel I'd be using. Like, not to cut
It's
you
like a
off.
snow
or anything.
shovel.
It's like a snow shovel, or it would be the shovel that I would be using out in my backyard, putting a new deck together. That was our big pandemic project, is we were revamping our deck out here. And, it was like one of those shovels we were using.
A snow shovel. And Taker swings this shovel like a baseball bat and damn near takes Vince's head off.
He does, and it sounded like, one of those cookie sheet shots. Like, I could have sworn it was, like, gimmicked looking at it, but... I mean, God, it was sickening regardless. But, I mean, Taker finally decides to show some mercy to this fucking asshole, and he picks him up in a fireman's carry, transports him over to the grave, and Vince fights back valiantly. It's a low blow, but...
Throws on surprise pocket sand in Taker's eye.
some surprise pocket sand. It's a dirt like dust at ringside. So
Dirt-like substance.
yeah, it's a dirt like dust that Vince throws in Taker's eyes. It's not gold dust. The Dustin Rhodes was nowhere to be found on this show, but Vince goes into the grave, and you want to talk about this. You want to talk about this spot with the.
Yeah, I do, because if I were to nitpick this match at all, I could forgive everything. I could forgive everything on this match and everything on the show if it wasn't for this botched spot. So Taker goes up to the bulldozer to bury Vince in the hole, and then there's a fucking explosion.
Yeah.
A botched explosion. And Taker is running away from the explosion. He's got blood all over his arm. And who shows up but Kane?
Of course.
Why? Because Kane's a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
He's not here on Vince's behalf. He's not here. He's not a paid, hired hand for any reason. He just wants to kill his brother.
Yeah, of course. You know, it's the longest running evil plan of all time. Kane is wanting to put his brother, either kill him or put him into a coma. One of the two.
So Kane throws the weakest, and I mean weakest, punches I've ever seen. They're not even connecting with any part of Taker's body.
Mm-hmm.
And I could forgive everything. I could forgive the botched explosion if it wasn't for that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All he had to do was like grab Taker at that point because he's wounded from the explosion and throw him in the grave.
Yeah.
It makes what happened in 2010 with the buried alive match between Taker and Kane absolutely no better, because they had the chance to redeem themselves with that, and it was even worse in 2010.
Somehow it was even worse, and the Nexus got involved in that for absolutely no fucking reason.
With the same weak-ass punches and kicks.
Yeah. Yeah. The same old shit, man. But yeah, exactly to your point, breaking little Tomas's heart and mine, because I was a big Undertaker fan as well. Kane shoves Taker into the grave, pulls Vince out of the hole that Vince was supposed to avoid. Remember, from Taz's Keys to Victory. So Vince very much avoided the hole, goes into the backhoe, and Kane, as an added touch, one thing I didn't notice until now, Kane reaches into the grave and pulls Taker's bandana off of his head. The American Badass bandana, holds it up like Taker would triumphantly as all the dirt falls into the grave, and that is the end of the American Badass character. He was killed with a dirt-like dust, a big old ton of it.
And did you notice that Vince wasn't even announced as the winner? Vince wasn't even anywhere to be seen, because this wasn't even about Vince anymore. This was about Kane.
It was about Kane putting his brother out of his misery. Vince wanted no more part of being on screen again, and he wouldn't be. He wouldn't be until about 2006, which is weird thinking about, oddly enough. Vince is this despicable heel, and then at WrestleMania 20, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but Vince goes out to thank the crowd. After you did all that shit, after you cost The Undertaker all of his WWE title shots, after you beat the shit out of your daughter at No Mercy, now you're going out there and being like, I just wanted to say thank you for supporting us for 20. Suspend disbelief.
That's Vince for you. Now, what would happen to The Undertaker? Stay tuned. We will be getting into that very soon.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait for that August retro pod. But, oh man, not much of a match, but I mean, I don't know how to rate this, man. It's a hell of a...
For the enjoyment factor, I'll give it 2.5. Would have got a little higher if it wasn't for that botched finish.
For the beatdown, I'll give it a thumbs up, but I definitely see what you're saying about the botched finish. But the beatdown was very entertaining to rewatch at this time. But oh man, you want to talk about a match that was not really all that entertaining, unfortunately.
So let's do a little review, shall we?
Yes.
So on this show, Kane killed Shane McMahon and threw him in an ambulance. Stone Cold Steve Austin's career was ended, and The Undertaker was buried alive.
God.
Why don't we send the fans home happy with a very underwhelming main event?
World Heavyweight title is up for grabs. Goldberg is defending in a rematch against Triple H, of course, who, just to give you some background, Triple H in non-kayfabe had just gotten married to Stephanie McMahon, so he needed to take some time off anyway. So what they do to kill some time is Triple H basically flashes the cash in Stamford, Connecticut in a segment that I'm sure was pre-taped right before his honeymoon. And he's like, I'll give $100,000 of my own money to the guy who puts Goldberg on the shelf. Specifically, he said on the shelf. He didn't say, oh, whoever injures Goldberg, whoever incapacitates him, puts him on the shelf, which basically means that Goldberg would be done for a year, at least. Enough to vacate the world title.
Here's my issue with that angle. So a lot of people try to do this. Mark Henry runs Goldberg through a door. Many wrestlers try to ambush Goldberg, try to run him over with the car. But who ends up getting the hit? Batista. Batista who Pillmanizes Goldberg.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If this was a setup from all along, that's nepotism, first of all, because
it sure
someone
is,
in the inner circle ended up getting the money. And second of all, Goldberg's still walking out to the ring to defend the championship. So Batista did not get the job done.
No.
Give me back that money. Give me back that money, Batista.
Triple H is like, I want a refund. Something like that.
Get the job done.
WrestleMania 21 should have been a big money match, also with the world title on the line. Please give me back $100,000, Big Dave. If you lose, I get $100,000 back that I gave you for not getting the job done against Goldberg.
Very underwhelming build-up.
Well, the
Take
build
this match and the Team Bischoff, Team Austin, switch that shit around.
The build was fine, but yes,
Bischoff and Austin should have went on last.
I absolutely agree with that. 150,000%. I don't know who it was that said, "Oh, I need to go on last." Well, I don't want to imply anything because obviously Triple H is the man, and he is. Man, that segment of WrestleMania got me, man. Right deep in the feels from my childhood, but
but we ain't talking 2022.
No,
we're talking
this is the reign of terror. This is the reign of terror we're talking about when Triple H was the challenger, oddly enough. So these two get 11 minutes. It's very basic, very one note. Ric Flair tries to run interference to make things a little bit more exciting, but other than that, this crowd is not really reacting to this match all that much. I'm assuming because they just saw The Undertaker get killed right in front of them.
So let's get to the finish. We have Randy Orton, who was made a star literally 2 matches ago, and Batista, who was starting to become a star because of his interference in that match. And they made him look like fucking garbage.
They made him look like geeks. Goldberg speared both of them. Then he finally spears Triple H and spear, jackhammer. Very underwhelming 3 count. The crowd did not know what to expect. It was
a star and a half.
Oh, star and 3/4. I mean,
yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call it terrible, but it was very, very one note, very basic.
Nobody remembers that this was the main event.
Unremarkable for Survivor Series, that's for sure.
On a match where The Undertaker got buried alive, Stone Cold Steve Austin's career ended, and Kane beat Shane McMahon, nobody gives a flying fuck about the World Heavyweight Championship.
No, not at all. Not at all. And it would only get worse for a couple more months up until a new challenger steps up to the plate at WrestleMania. But this is Survivor Series 2003. I mean, you and I were joking a lot about this show and how, the announcers are fucking confused, but this is a very memorable show. I would honestly call this one of the more entertaining Survivor Series of all time. One of the most important Survivor Series of all time. I'm giving it an 8.5. I think it's one of the top 3 shows of 2003.
I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to give it a 9.
Wow.
This is one of my favorite Survivor Series of all time. Despite my heart getting ripped out and stomped on the ground, it's still such a memorable Survivor Series for all the right reasons. And this would just be a stepping stone for some of the bigger storylines going into WrestleMania. This is where the seeds are getting planted right now for 2 of the main events.
That's usually where a lot of WrestleMania seeds are planted anyway, is that Survivor Series nowadays. So they realize, we got to start building up for Royal Rumble, and we got to start planting the seeds for WrestleMania.
Say what you want about this year's Survivor Series, but that's when the alliance between Austin Theory and Vince McMahon started with the stupid egg, and that all culminated at WrestleMania. So
Vince's
it's still a practice. It's still a practice that's, going on to this day.
Christ. Oh boy, yeah, but very, very enjoyable show for sure. I don't know how the hell we're already almost at the end of the year 2003 in this retrospective, but I don't know about you, my friend. I'm having a great time looking at it. I'm looking forward to not stopping this anytime soon. Going into the year 2004, hot and heavy. There's a lot more 2004 to talk about. We have one more shitty pay-per-view in 2003 to cover, though, next month. And you guys have also voted in a retro Backlash show, just to throw that out there. Backlash 2001 won the poll, which I'm sure made Tomas very happy because there's another goddamn last man standing match on that show. What the fuck are you guys doing to me?
And until we get to that pay-per-view, we're going to be asking ourselves one question. Which way did he go? Which way did he go? More on that later.
More on that later. Yeah, I can't wait to talk about the Ultimate Submission match, not the Last Man Standing match. But yeah, folks, smash that subscribe button and that thumbs up if you haven't already. Thank you all again for supporting this this little pod that we have over here. Thank you for supporting the channel. Really does mean a ton. And see you guys for the next one. Commence that back talk. Let us know what you thought about Survivor Series 2003, if it ranks at the top of your list. And yeah, should be a fun discussion to be had with you all. And I can't wait to do more. So stay tuned for the next one. Take care, guys.